Hello, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about part 4 of Thomas Hardy's Jude the Obscure. I finished this maybe about an hour or 2 hours ago. This part 4. A lot of interesting stuff takes place in part 4. So it opens with Jude visiting Sue at Shaston. Shaston is where she and her husband Phillotson live and teach. And he has been in Christminster, of course, been very brutish, been very contemplative, very moody, and he has decided that he needs to see Sue again. And so he goes to Shaston, where Sue is, and he goes to the school building, to the church building where he knows she will be. And while he's waiting for her, he's playing a hymn on a piano, and it's a hymn that he hears a couple weeks prior to his meeting with Sue that really affected him emotionally. And so he is sitting out playing this song, and there's a young girl sweeping on the stairs of the building, and so he asks about Sue. The girl doesn't seem really to know where she is or anything about her, so he sits down and he starts playing this song, and then through the corner of his eye, he sees the shape of a person walk past him, and he just assumes it's the cleaning girl until the person sits down next to him and puts their hand on his hand, and he realizes that it's Sue. And she's also a fan of this particular hymn that he has been playing, and she takes over playing for him, and she starts playing it on the piano. Not necessarily better than he played it, but it's described as being much more divine than the melody that he was producing. And they talk, and they connect together through this song. And Jude insists that it is because they are like-minded in head. And then Sue says that might be so, but they are not. Or I'm sorry, I got it backwards. Jude said they are like-minded in heart, and Sue says possibly we are not like-minded in head, which means that we can never fit together. Which this was a very interesting thing I thought of Sue to say, because in the whole previous part, in part 3, Sue is basically laying the groundwork for the reasons why she and Jude are good together and why she wants to be with Jude. And then in this part, she is giving all the reasons why it doesn't work. And her character seems to be very much of a contradictor. She seems to say something or do something and then almost immediately do or say something that completely negates the first thing that she did or said, without admitting to the fact that she is doing that, which is absolutely frustrating as the reader, but also just seeing it through the perspective of the other characters. It's incredibly frustrating. And she is very much a flirt, very much a tease with both Jude and Phillotson. And so both the characters and then you as the reader don't really know where she lands emotionally at any particular time, or where her loyalties fall at any particular time. It seems to always be this constant guessing game of, you know, what side is she going to be on in this chapter, or in this part, or in this conversation. And there really don't seem to be any set ground rules for what determines where she's going to go or what she's going to do in a certain chapter or a certain part. It seems to be incredibly loose and frantic and just all over the place. She just seems to be all over the place emotionally, which could be said for all of the characters in this novel, but particularly in part 4 is the first time reading this novel that we get a bit more comfortable with Sue. We see her in previous parts, but I feel in part 4 she is really developed fully in her character, and we're able to start seeing her personality more in detail, and able to sort of see her personality in comparison to the personality of the other characters in the story. And so they talk, and essentially through the course of this conversation, Sue says that Jude can't come see her again, that she didn't want him to come in the first place. She never asked him to come, and he can't come again in the future. He can't come and see her. And so they leave, they part ways, and Jude kind of tells himself in his mind that Sue obviously didn't actually mean that, and she definitely wants to see him again. And so he sort of vows privately to himself that he will go and see her again, no matter what he resolves to do. So even if he makes a personal promise to not go see her again, he knows that he most likely will go see her again, and most likely she wants him to anyway. And so obviously blatantly ignoring Sue's request, while also Sue's request really isn't that valid, because while she says, "Don't come see me again," as she has said before, either she knows Jude will come back, or she knows that she will end up going to Jude, as she has done in previous parts. And so really, her request was unsubstantiated from the beginning. And I think Jude probably knew that, and she probably knew that. They have this strange dynamic of just saying things that really have no backing to them, or asking for requesting a certain behavior that they don't actually want to see exhibited in the other person, which is sort of an interesting request to make if you don't actually want to see it fulfilled. And so they split ways, and they say they're not gonna, they won't see each other anymore. Then Jude receives a letter from a relative saying that his aunt is not doing well. His Aunt Drizella is dying. And so he writes a letter to Sue, and he says, "I know you don't want to see me again, and I promised I wouldn't see you again, but our shared relative is dying, and I thought that you should know, and the funeral is on Friday." And he never asks her to come, but he knows that she will come, and she never responds, and he takes her not responding as a sign that she is in fact planning on coming. And she does come. She comes to the funeral, and after the funeral of their aunt, and after all of the family business has been taken care of in regards to the passing of their aunt, they have a couple more conversations, and through the courses of these conversations, their bond sort of grows even more. And their meeting ends with an embrace and Jude kissing her, and she is not receptive to the kiss, but she also doesn't fend it off, and she seems somewhat to welcome the physical affection from Jude, and it doesn't go anything beyond that. She is leaving on a train to go home when they kiss, and so there's no conversation that really takes place after this action, and she leaves, and she's going back home to Shaston. And when she gets back, she tells her husband Phillotson about the embrace and about Jude holding her hand, but she never broaches the subject of Jude kissing her, which I think is interesting, because she is shown to not really have much of an emotional attachment to anyone, and yet she seems to be kind of walking on eggshells around Phillotson. I think really what's going on is I think she is purposely trying to smooth over the interactions that she has with Jude because of a request she's about to ask. And the request that she asks is a couple of scenes later, after returning home and after not talking about the kiss. She asks Phillotson if she can live apart from him. And this is part of a conversation that she has with Jude earlier on in this part. Before their embrace and before their kiss, they talk about unhappy marriages. And Sue asks if it's wrong for a married woman who is unhappy to confide in a third party, in this case, confide in Jude about her unhappiness in her marriage. And so they discuss sort of the ethics of marriage, and the part that religion plays in marriage, and what part in marriage does not have to be religious, but can be but focuses more on the legality side of marriage. And so Sue requests from her husband that she can live separately, that she can live apart from him, and he of course pushes for a little bit more detail, because that's a very strange request, and he kind of broaches the subject of that's kind of an unusual request, and he wants to know why does she want to live apart from him. And so she explains that she was emotionally immature when she made the decision to marry him, and that she really felt very forced into it, and although she did choose him, she knows now that she wasn't ready to choose her partner. And sort of acting very much the victim in this relationship, as well as sort of undoing multiple things that she said in previous scenes and in previous parts of this novel, almost perfectly contradicting herself in some senses. And so Phillotson he keeps pushing, and he finds out that Sue wants to live with Jude, not as a husband, she says, but as sort of a life companion, sort of as this just embodiment of another of herself. This is what Phillotson often says, is he says they seem to be two people or one person separated. And so Sue really kind of harps on this fact of they just fit really well together, and she's not going to live with him as a husband, but as a partner, as a relative, as a friend. Of course, something very unconventional for the time. But she's adamant about it. She's adamant that she no longer wants to live with Phillotson. She says that she is even physically anxious while living with him, or just very on edge and uncomfortable living with him. And so, of course, this is the first time that he's hearing of any of this. And so he's pretty appalled by what he's hearing. In the end, he does agree, and he does allow her to live on her own. And really what it took was, after making this request, Sue purposely placed herself in far rooms of their house from where he was at any particular time, sort of to show off her message of her being uncomfortable living at home with him. And the scene that really makes Phillotson agree with her is he goes into their bedroom at night when Sue is already in the bed, and he starts putting on his night clothes, and Sue sort of stirs in the bed and sits up and sort of screams and falls out of a window that is open that's next to the bed and hits the ground. She doesn't really hurt herself, but it's this action, it's this repulsive jump out of this window, out of fear, out of disgust. It's Phillotson doesn't really know what's going on. He goes outside, he picks Sue up, he carries her back inside, and basically it's in this scene that he agrees, because he says, if you are at the and before they talk, Sue insists that it was a night terror that made her jump out of the window, which of course it wasn't. She was awake the whole time. So Phillotson says, if my appearance in a room causes you to throw yourself out of a window, I will definitely let you live apart from me, because you're going to kill yourself if you stay here, because clearly you were true in saying you can't live with me. And so he agrees to let Sue leave and go live with Jude. He even offers to give her money. He offers to give her all the furniture of the house. I do think that Phillotson really does love Sue. He is also, however, not really going about a lot of these situations with the best tact. He also is somewhat self-centered and self-absorbed and really only wants what's best for him. He never really asked Sue a lot of what she wanted. Granted, that was not completely his fault. However, Sue has shown throughout part 4 that she is terrible at any sort of deep conversation. There is a whole lot of talking. There's a whole lot of dialogue in this novel. It's a very dialogue-heavy novel, but what I'm picking up on is a lot of the dialogue is superfluous. A lot of it doesn't really matter at all, and most of it is very surface level conversation. Anytime any sort of deep topic is broached between characters, it seems that it is instantly challenged by some trivial matter, and that trivial matter gets all the attention, while the deep part of the conversation gets sort of pushed to the side and never addressed again. And I think that's why all these characters are in the messes that they are in this 4th part, is anytime they have a true problem that they need resolved between another member of this novel's cast. Anytime Sue has a problem with Jude, or Jude, anytime he had a problem with Arabella, they never asked to talk about their problem. Instead, they always ended up shifting their focus to some smaller matter that didn't really have anything to do with the problem at all. And so their problems and their grievances and their grudges just grew and grew and festered. Instead of addressing them early on in the nascent stages, they let them sit and grow and get deeper and deeper. And so now in part 4, I think we're dealing with these characters having a lot of hurt. I think a lot of them are very emotionally damaged by the other members in their life, but none of them really want to talk about it. No one wants to say why they feel the way they do, and honestly have a conversation with the opposing party. Instead, they just pick these little topics to talk about. They pick these little irritants, these little quirks that are bothering them about the other person, and that's what they focus on, instead of focusing on the real issue of what could resolve the conflicts that they're facing. And so after letting Sue leave, Phillotson takes a lot of heat from the school board where he teaches. Essentially, he is sent a letter asking for him to be quietly dismissed because of his action in allowing his wife to have this affair. The school board questions his morality. They question his ability to honestly teach children, and they don't know if they want someone of his moral standards influencing their next generation. And he refuses to be dismissed. He says that his personal life does not rub over into his professional life, that there is no reason why this decision to let his wife move on in life without him should impact the way that he teaches children. And so he refuses to be dismissed. Throughout this time, he is in conversation with an old schoolmate who is also a teacher, who is trying to convince Phillotson to step out of teaching, leave the school before they forcefully dismiss him, because if he gets forcefully dismissed or fired from the school, he will not be able to be hired at another institution of learning. It will ruin him. The best thing he can do is to apologize for his actions in his personal life and retire from the school, wait a couple of years, and then get another job teaching. Phillotson doesn't listen to this. He says that he's going to keep working. There's no reason why this whole issue with Sue should have even been brought up in the first place. It's not the school board's right to investigate into his personal life. All they need to care about is his ability to teach, which is unhindered by this event that has transpired in his personal life, and so he stays on teaching. Eventually, a public hearing is organized. He goes to this public hearing. Sort of a big fight breaks out of people who are for Phillotson versus the school board who is against them. There's a lot of physical fighting that actually breaks out, as well as just mental, verbal battles and confrontations, and it ends with Phillotson leaving his position as a teacher. And so he has quite a lot that's going on his side. And then the story shifts. The scene shifts to back to Jude and Sue. So Sue has boarded a train, made it to Jude. Jude boards with her, and they continue on to Albertston, which is a town several miles away from Shaston, where Sue had been living, and also away from Christminster, where Jude has been living, because Jude says they can't live in either of those two places because they're too well known, and obviously their relationship has stirred up quite a tizzy amongst the social groups of both Shaston and Christminster, and so they need to go somewhere where they are unknown. So Albertston is a town where they are both unknown, and that's where they're headed. The last time that Jude was in Albertston was when he was seeing Arabella for the last time. And so the hotel that they end up staying at this first evening upon their arrival in Albertson, where they stop for the night and for a meal, is the same hotel where Jude spent his last night with Arabella. And so when they make it to this hotel, Jude leaves for a moment, leaving Sue at the table alone. Another barmaid, not Arabella, she doesn't work there anymore. A barmaid comes up to Sue and basically says, I saw your relative or your gentleman friend, your caller, whoever it is you're with here. I saw him here just a couple months ago with another woman. I just thought I should let you know. And Sue instantly knows who this other woman is. She instantly knows that it's Arabella. And so Jude comes back to the table, and Sue basically says, I can't believe you brought me to the hotel where you spent your last night with Arabella. And Jude sort of looks around the dining room, looks around the hotel, and basically goes, oh, wow, that was super of me. I just now recognized where I am. I didn't realize this is where I brought you. So kind of a stupid move on Jude's part. But that launches them into another conversation. Essentially, it's a conversation where Sue is kind of pressing Jude into professing love for her and her alone, and asking him about the divorce that Arabella has requested, what he's going to do about that. He says that he will fulfill his duty to release her because it is in her best interest, and he wants to be kind to her. And so he's going to let Arabella go, and then Arabella can legally marry the man she has virtually married in Australia. And so Sue's very happy to hear this. Obviously, it means that Jude will be legally unattached, which means that she could pursue a relationship with Jude. Jude says multiple times throughout the scene that he loves Sue, that he cares about Sue more than he cares about anyone. And Sue keeps pressing him to admit these two facts, to admit that he loves her, to admit that he cares about her, yet she never reciprocates. And she forces him into a lot of corners, basically by saying that all the things that he says are not true, that he obviously doesn't love her as much as he says he does because it's taken this long for him to come around to her. Kind of all this backward stuff, really a lot of illogical, unrealistic things that don't have any backing with the story. She's saying a lot of remarks that don't really fit into their past relationship, sort of making up events that never transpired between the two of them. Sort of an interesting scene, a lot of dialogue, a lot of not necessarily important dialogue, again, kind of hitting on a point that I talked about a little bit earlier. But Sue never says that she loves Jude. Then later on in the scene, they embrace again. Jude kisses her again. She acts sort of standoffish towards Jude, kind of putting a lot of falsities on Jude that he really is not responsible for. He has a lot of his own problems, but he also gets a lot of falsities attached to him as well by Sue. But then Sue will flip. So in one scene, she'll be very abrasive, very rude, very cold and distant towards Jude. And then in the next scene, she'll be talking about how she is so glad to finally be able to be with him and that she cares about him so much. And it's just a very, very interesting sort of back and forth of emotion between the two of them. But this part ends with Jude and Sue being together, living together, not necessarily seeming like they are pursuing a legal relationship with each other, but they both seem to be consenting to this new living arrangement that they have come up with. Phillotson has basically lost everything that he had, and is sort of starting over. Jude has in some ways lost everything that he started with because he pulled out of his education to enter into the church in order to be with Sue. He pulled out of his university dreams to be with Sue. He has burned all of his theological texts and all of his divinity texts because he feels that he is a hypocrite to be living this sort of unreligious life with all of these religious texts and religious examples in book form in his possession. And so he burns all of his divinity and all of his theological books. Arabella basically gets released from Jude so that she is free to pursue a legalized marriage with her virtual husband from Australia. And then Sue is with Jude. And Sue seems to be the one who has caused the most damage so far, but has also gotten out the most scot-free. She basically has all of the same things that she had when we first meet her. She seems to be the one who has undergone the least damage throughout this process, which is very interesting because so far she seems to be one of the biggest causes of all of this damage, and yet she has been the least troubled by them. So I'm curious to see in part 5 and then in the finale part in part 6 if any of that changes, if she starts feeling any of the repercussions of any of her actions, or if she stays sort of oblivious to the damage that she's causing. It'll be very interesting to see it play out. So that was my somewhat rambly recap of part 4 of Jude the Obscure. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any thoughts about part 4, if you have read Jude the Obscure, and you have any thoughts about any of the points I touched on in this video, please feel free to let me know them down in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.